Now, around 500 people leave the care system every year, whether it be from a foster home or a residential home when they turn 18. But there is some aftercare organised, but it's not a statutory right for young people, meaning that the availability and quality can vary hugely from county to county. Well, to discuss some of the issues around aftercare, I'm joined now by Jennifer Gargan, who works for EPIC, an organisation that represents people in care, and by Gordon Jeyes from the HSE. But first of all, let's hear from two people who had very different experiences of aftercare. Our reporter Aisling Riordan spoke to them.
But I was only there for about 2 months. It was while they were waiting to find me a proper residential house to live in.
It was a huge gap, wasn't it?
Deadly.
Oh, it's mad.
Oh, it was brilliant. I loved it. I'd go back any day.
Would you actually?
That ball pen.
Oh no, I hated it. I thought it was too big. I thought it was the most scariest looking place I've ever been in my life.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Suzanne and Mark have only met, but are chatting like old friends. They were both taken into care as children and have realised they lived in the same residential house at different times. It's one thing they have in common, but their aftercare experience is not.
Well, my story in relation to care basically started when I was 9. I was entered into care, just various reasons. My mum just couldn't look after myself at the time. I remained in care then until I was 18. During this time I lived in both residential and foster care placements. I lived in 2 foster families and 2 residential units before I went to live in Designate with my final foster family, who now are my family. They're my mum and dad, and I would see them very often. I have the key to their house, which was very nice, you know, and I'd go down when they're not there, rob their food as any daughter would, do me washing, do me few bits, and they wouldn't know I was there until I get a text saying the toilet roll is missing again. You know, and they are my family now, and I was very lucky that I fell on my feet when I met them, and I hope they know that. But I really did land on my feet when I went to live with them.
And what was your experience of aftercare like?
Initially, I didn't receive an aftercare package programme. I did get financial support, but the aftercare planning that you're meant to receive is supposed to start at 16, and it's supposed to equip you with the skills that you need to live independently. So how to pay bills, how to go about banking, kind of general stuff that would frighten a lot of young people. So I relied on my mum and dad and other supports for that, to help me with that. And I went straight to college and I rented, and it was difficult, but I got there and I'm finished college now. I have my social care degree and I'm just looking forward to working in the area.
And what do you think needs to be done?
I mean, the general idea of aftercare is fantastic. It's that it should equip young people with the necessary skills to live independently. The problem with it is that the legislation in place at the minute states what may be provided to young people, not what will. And I just for myself and from kind of my friends, I don't know any 18-year-old who left care and automatically became an adult. I know 30-year-olds living at home. You know, and if you are in care and you're deemed to need to be in the care of the state, responsibility should lie with them to continue until as far as that person needs support.
And Mark, when did you go into care?
Well, I moved into residential care when I was 6 years old. The first place was Dunleary, that I moved into. It was a big facility, a huge house, 34 people there. Then I moved back with my mother and moved into Blanchardstown. Couldn't get my place back into cottage homes after moving back into residential. I had to stay in a hospital for 2 months. Got my place back in the cottage homes in the end, then moved into my longest placement, which was Dalkey, home again.
And you had a different experience with aftercare. Tell me about that.
Well, home again, I started my care plan at the age of 16. Smiley's Aftercare group came out to me, set up a kind of a program that I'd do, like I'd learn how to do my own laundry, learn how to cook my own meals, learn how to buy my own food. When I was 18 in February, I left in the August of that year. I still have 1 year left of school, so I was in 6th year by myself while rented at the same time. But the house did give me an option, whether to stay there for my 6th year or whether to move out. But I chose to move out because of the rules that were in the house.
And tell me about the difference between going from residential care to being out on your own.
Well, because you start your programme at the age of 16, you only have 2 years left basically in your home, and you do get scared, because I got scared, but equal as because I was in education at the same time. There's always going to be that challenge in living within residential, because you always know you're going to be by yourself.
After his leaving cert, Mark did go to college, but decided he wanted time out. As a result, support was withdrawn, and unlike Suzanne, with no generous foster family to turn to, Mark ended up homeless.
I was a late starter in school. I started school when I was 8, so from a period of 8 until I was 19 leaving, I had to really scram in as much education as I could, and it was really difficult. So I wanted that year out or 2 years out to kind of relax from the education scene. Because I decided to drop out of school, I got just discharged from the service, Smiley's. That wasn't because of Smiley's aftercare service, it's because of the HSE themselves. The HSE themselves convinced that if you're not in education, they can't give you the service that you rely on. So I had to go out looking for a new apartment. I was homeless for the 2 months. I had to stay with mates, and I had to stay 1 week here, 1 week there, 1 week here, 1 week there. Eventually found a place in Dalkey, been renting out for 2 years. Some of my bills went up rocket high, €400, couldn't get any help anywhere. Tried to ring the aftercare service again. They were unable to give me help because I wasn't in it. The aftercare service, basically.
OK, well, that was Mark and Suzanne speaking to our reporter Aisling Riordan. Well, I'm joined now by Gordon Jeyes, CEO Designate of the new Child and Family Agency, and by Jennifer Gargan, Director with EPIC. Thank you both very much indeed for coming in this morning. Gordon, I'll just go to you first there on Mark's story. It seems when he came out of education, over the age of 18, he became homeless. That's what he reports. What's your reaction to that?
Clearly, our strongest links are for the young people who are in full-time education, and the standard of support there is very good by international comparison, and the number in full-time education is far higher than our neighbours. Clearly, there are areas of the service where we must be saying we need to do better, and we need to get better links. In this instance, Mark should have had more support, not least linking our support with social protection support. We shouldn't have that difficult transition phase merely as a consequence of a young person's decisions. Young people always, any of us, when we're going through the independence, I can do this, I will choose, need somewhere, as Suzanne said, to go back to. To take the toilet rolls, whatever, to go back. And it's more difficult for the young people who've been in a residential place. We're exploring that. And
Gordon, can I ask you, if Mark were to leave now, and he's in his 20s now, but if an 18-year-old were to come out of education now, leave their care placement, would it be any different for them? Is there a definite link now?
There's still inconsistency. The service is improving. We've just completed organisational reform. We're concluding discussions with the unions. There will be dedicated aftercare team in every area. We wish steering committees in every area, because this isn't just about social work, it's about education, it's about training, it's about social protection, it's about housing, it's about health checks. So the bits of the jigsaw are going into place, obviously.
But not in place as we speak.
It's in place in many parts of the country. As I went round the country in the summer, one of the questions said, "Who's in charge of aftercare? Tell me your aftercare statistics," and they could know them well. It's not as consistent as we would like, and there are still some gaps to make sure that bridge
we'll come back to the policy.
We have increased the number of staff, and we're putting a lot of resources into it, but that's obviously limited because we're struggling financially.
If I can bring Jennifer in here. Jennifer, what's your reaction? You work with young people in care. You're dealing with them, I suppose, on a fairly frequent basis, to what we heard from Mark and Suzanne there.
We work every day with children and young people in care, and I suppose what I would say is that there's several things that really need to happen to make aftercare work for young people. And one of the things is that we need to prepare young people. We heard there what Suzanne had to say. Young people need They need to know what's happening when they're leaving care. They need to know where they're going to be living, and they need to be well equipped. We need to give them the skills. We need to prepare them from the day they come into care, but particularly in those crucial years between 16 and 18.
And is that happening, Jennifer, now?
Well, it is happening sometimes, but it's not happening all the time. If a young person doesn't have an allocated social worker, then they risk not being referred early enough to the service. We have come across cases where young people are on their 18th birthday and they have no plan in place. And then,
are you serious? You'd hit 18 with no idea where you're going to sleep the next night?
Yes, that unfortunately does happen. Now, not
Hang
all
on,
the time.
Gordon, that happens. That's happening now. You're hearing it from Jennifer. What do you make of that?
Well, it's very difficult to act sweeping generalisations like that. That does happen. The care planning process, we are reviewing that. It's been thought of as far too much as an event. You know, I'm talking the general care planning. So we're having discussions, we're reviewing that, we're modernising that. I've met with young people, including an advisory group of young people who've been through the care process that I've commissioned to EPIC to set up, because we work with them on that and listening to them.
But just going back to the fact that
to make sure that care planning and, as the young people have emphasised,
but what about the 18-year-olds leaving now without one?
People can come in and throw exceptions at me. I would look into that. You know, that should absolutely be the exception. We should, the vast majority, over 90%, do have an allocated social worker. We need to begin the preparation, the independent skills. As parent, as the corporate parent, my children need these skills every bit as much as anybody else's children.
Jennifer, can I ask you, it seems, you know, from looking at this, that the care system works extremely well for the vast majority of children who are in it in terms of fostering. But the children who it doesn't work for are those who are often the most needy, the most difficult, the most problematic in many ways to find placements for.
And
is that being addressed?
Those are the young people that we need to prepare. They need to be prepared early. They need to have the skills. They need to have the skills to be able to cope and manage and live independently. So we need timely preparation and planning. We also need services that are flexible and relevant. We heard there about Mark. You know, young people now, they leave, if they don't choose to engage with the service or for whatever reason are not able or equipped to do it at the age of 18, our view is that it should be flexible. They should be able to come back into the service and have those 3 years, even if they're over the age of 21, when technically they are no longer eligible. And we also need to stop the cycle going into the next generation. And by that I mean that we need to give every child the best possible care they can have. We need to have stability for them, consistency. As we heard from Suzanne, we heard very clearly from Suzanne the benefits of a consistent relationship with a family, living in a family.
If that's possible, I suppose, in fairness, it's not always going to be possible.
If it's possible. But our research shows that the more moves a young person has, the more likely they are to be unstable and have poor outcomes after they leave care.
Briefly, if I can go back to you, Gordon, there's talk now, this HSE Leaving Aftercare Services national policy, you were talking about it there yourself. When is that going to be in place? Can you give us a date for that?
We are beginning to implement it. The policy's in place. As I've just said, we have agreed the structure. Every area will have specific identified aftercare workers.
When will they have these?
We've agreed that now. We're just concluding the discussions for the organisational arrangements. We are setting up the steering groups because it is about the whole range of services the young people have, so that
and is there a budget in place to provide all of these?
There's significant resources go into this. We've got to make sure that the money given to us for the taxpayers used to target those most in need, and that situations such as Mark found himself in.
So just to clarify, is there any new money coming in for the aftercare plan?
There has been some new money. There are now 45 dedicated aftercare workers, which is a modest increase. I think it's going to be a bit more about looking at the well in excess of 10 million we spend in this, 3 million to get the voluntary sector to help, 6 million in staff and so on, that we're using that as effectively as we possibly can, and working the agency and opportunities with education, welfare, with family resource centres, so it's got a broader multidisciplinary base.
OK, listen, thank you both very much indeed for coming in, Gordon and Jennifer.